I'll have unmuted. Yes.
Yes, I told Kate I wear the weekend. Yeah. We finally got power. That the morning table. Yes, last night, not really. So, yeah. But the good news is that it knocked out the internet, so the kids couldn't watch TV.
That's good.
So they got to like play and be imaginative instead of like in front of like a screen. So they're. No, but we did go to Brewster's more often than we probably would have.
That's my favorite drink right there.
Yeah. That's
I
a
love
good
that
drink.
thing. It's a good drink. Oh, we're gonna drink.
The lemonade, yeah.
Hey, everyone, before we get started, if you're here for anything other than just a watching, please come on up. And if there isn't enough chair situation, let's get more chairs. It will work a lot better if we can all be close in and be heard. Okay, it is just a few minutes past 4:30. So I'm going to call to order today's meeting of the Monroe County Justice Fiscal Advisory Committee. It's July 3rd, 2023. And we will start with the adoption of the agenda. I also have a sign-in sheet, so I'm going to start that moving around. And if your representative organization or department isn't listed, please feel free to add. Or do we have any amendments to today's agenda? All right. Under item 4, I do want to make sure that we have room for a discussion that involves New Leaf, New Life and what they're doing. So I'm not going to offer a formal amendment. I don't think that's necessary because hopefully it'll be relevant to item 4A. But I did want to just make sure that everybody knew that was coming. So if there aren't any amendments, all in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving to item 3, committee structure and processes. The first item here is committee work during off weeks, and I believe the intent of this agenda item, this is where you see the messiness of having 3 people being co-chairs, but not allowed to really talk to each other about the meetings in between. So I believe that the intent of this item was to clarify what we were doing in between these more formal meetings. And our administrator, Courtney, is not here today, which makes me sad, but I'm happy for her. And so she prepares the agenda based on input from all of us. And she felt like we needed to make sure that it was very clear that our work outside of these meetings in the off weeks was kind of outreach and education for ourselves to bring back to the meeting. And we would be doing that not with each other. So we won't be noticing formal meetings unless we're all 3 going to be in a space together, or 2 of us, I guess, because that would be a quorum. So I just wanted to make that clear. And we had come up with some ideas for visiting some stakeholder groups, because I felt like it would be more valuable if 2 of us went. I like it much better if we have multiple perspectives, hearing what folks have to say. So for instance, if we were to meet with the Board of Judges or attend one of their meetings, what we will do is one of us will go and we'll take another county council member with us. Because ultimately all of the county council is interested in the work going on here. And I don't think we'll have any problem recruiting someone to come along with us. Are there any questions about kind of the off week work? Okay. Great. The next thing is to reschedule our Intercept Zero meeting, which was scheduled for last Thursday and was canceled due to the weather. And hopefully not too many people left their homes before hearing about the cancellation, but I know it was very last minute. Proposed dates that I received from Courtney include July 24th and July 31st, I think, and possibly August 14th.
July 24th, it looks like Councilmember Crossley and I will be in a Sophia Travis Grants meeting.
Okay, so the 31st and August 14th. We do have, just for context, we have a meeting scheduled for next week, July 10th.
The 31st works for me.
And I was gonna say the 14th, we also have a Sophia Travis grant committee meeting. So the 31st probably is the better option.
All right. We will reschedule that meeting for discussing Intercept Zero in the sequential intercept model for July 31st at 4:30 p.m. Cross your fingers for the weather.
Yeah.
Madam
Yes.
Chair,
Mhm.
I have a general question about how we non-voting members can just participate in these meetings and how we're informed of the meetings. Because I did not know there was one on July 10th and I did not know about the one today until Friday or Saturday. So I am concerned about that. And also I imagine that part of the reason why we are all non-voting is because it's impossible to get a date when everybody can meet, which is fine, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
to be informed. And I also it's not clear to me how much we can participate? Like when you ask about agenda items, was that to all of us or was that to the voting members? So,
Does anyone have agenda items? It's
No,
for
I mean-
everybody.
okay, I didn't have any, but I just, I
It's
don't
for everybody.
understand how this all works.
Yeah, and the scheduling, I should be more clear. The scheduling, I'm mostly concerned about these two because of the impossibility of getting everybody here and the pace at which we want to try to move on gathering information. You say you're concerned, and you should be if you aren't getting notice of the meetings. I have to admit, I didn't have next week's on my calendar and just either for some reason. It's appearing now, but I don't know how that happened, but we have, our next meeting is July 10th at 4:30. Then we do not have anything on the 17th or the 24th. So then the following meeting, if I'm correct, is July 31st.
And then if
And we will send out a notification of that. I think because a lot of it was, here's your department, your organization, your body, and please send a representative. That's messy with the calendaring. But it should go to anybody who's attended. And anybody who attended any of the previous criminal justice, community justice reform committees, as you would be on that. So I'm not sure why that happened, and I apologize.
And then if we're unable to attend, for example, could I ask another council member to go in
Absolutely.
my place?
Yeah, and that would be great. That goes for anybody that's listed on the non-voting member list. We wanted that to be fluid and allow you that flexibility. And so, yeah, thanks for asking so that we make sure that happens. Are there other questions about kind of procedure process?
Wasn't so much a question, it's a comment. So because again, this is a brand new committee, like we just only had our organizational meeting on June 5th, and then last week it was canceled. I just also want to apologize for the delay in getting that out to everybody. We didn't realize how severe the storm was until everybody was trying to drive it and then receiving messages of everybody not being able to travel because of downed trees and no power and things like that. So just to apologize for that. But please work with us as much as possible. Our council staff is, we have people out on leave right now, and there's Ms. Mosier is the only person that's kind of working and trying to do all of those things. So as we are going through this, just keep in mind that we're trying our best and we will get organized to the best of our ability so that everybody can make sure and can continue to get those messages related to the meetings at hand. And then also with respect to sending proxies, if we could have, if council staff could know who is going to be your designated proxy, if you can give a heads up, that would be fantastic. Again, the office, and Ms. Mosier is doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And so she just is organized, and it helps us keep us organized as to who's coming and who won't be here, but who will be coming in your place. Of course, the goal is to have everybody here in attendance as much as possible. But if you are not able to attend, to just give the common courtesy to let people know who you will be standing in place of. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's much more clear than I was talking. Do you have anything to add?
I have nothing to add to that eloquence.
Fantastic. That said, that brings up a point that there might be somebody online who's trying to participate, and I'm not sure how, if we don't know the exact name.
And I'm going to help monitor that for you. So if someone raises their hand or gets, I'll help kind of keep an eye on that too.
So if you're attending online as part of the non-voting members, please raise your hand and we can promote you so that you can attend more fully. Okay, before we move on to item 4, I would like us each to introduce ourselves. simply because this is the first time all of us are at the table together for this purpose. And I'll start. My name is Kate Wiltz. I'm president of county council, member of the JFAC with my colleagues here. Let's go to my left.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Iverson. I am also on the county council, and I'm also the administrative chair for this body, which means that I help to rectify issues as they come up. So we'll get to that.
Hello, I'm Mayor John Hamilton of Bloomington, and here, I think with 2 seats, I'm in the police seat today. So thanks.
I'm Beverly Calvin Anderson, and I'm director of the city's community family resources.
Karen Renbeck, I'm from the Public Defender's Office.
I'm April Wilson. I'm from the Monroe County Prosecutor's Office.
Jordan McIntyre, the Executive Director of New Leaf New Life.
Melanie Vestage, the Senior Community Health Specialist at the Monroe County Health Department.
Isabel Piedmont Smith, Bloomington City Council.
I'm Misty James. I am previously incarcerated in our county jail.
Welcome to all of you.
No, you're fine. And Jennifer Crossley, Monroe County Council, District 4.
Oh, and we have someone online.
Hey, I'm Julie Thomas. I'm Monroe County Commissioner.
Okay, now welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to be here and participate in our messiness. You can't hear? The microphone and I are going to be closer. All right. So the way we've structured the series of meetings for the next few months is using the sequential intercept model. And that is spreads out the experience of individuals before, during, and after contact with our justice system. And we felt that there were certain parts of that model, certain intercepts, so to speak, that we could affect and need to have information in order to make financial decisions about. So we've put these where we can, and I'm going to share my screen in a little bit and hopefully make the intercept model thing a little bit more clear. But today we're going to focus on the investments that county council can be making to essentially reduce recidivism and invest in reentry services. So that's sort of the overall topic for today. And I feel like there are a lot of people that could be here with really important information that aren't sitting here right now. Some of us will be talking to or have talked to some of those folks, but this is meant as an educational setting for all of us and us in particular, because we will be taking what we hear back to county council in some form at the end of the summer. So I would like it to be a very open and organic conversation. That said, I never go anywhere without PowerPoint, and I made PowerPoint. So what I'll do is I'm going to start by sharing my screen and doing a little PowerPoint. And this is basically just a summary of what I've been thinking about in terms of relevant recommendations that we've already received, some information that we've already received, some things I threw in just to spur ideas and conversation. And so I'd like to move fairly quickly from getting us all on that kind of same page, thinking about things, to then talking about what you see as the most important changes we should be making, investments we should be making, things we are already doing that maybe need more or different types of support. Okay, multitasking is not my thing. So give me just a second. Guess I'll just do this down here. You can see the whole thing. I need to know if you'll see the whole thing. Oh, you do. Excellent. Okay. This is a picture of or a graphic that represents the sequential intercept model. And as I mentioned before, it covers kind of the spread of experience from prevention and diversion through someone's encounter with law enforcement and the court system, being incarcerated or going through court system, and then reentry, as well as then community corrections. So today we're focusing on Intercept 4. And Intercept 4 focuses on that time that that's the supports and services that are necessary for folks to leave incarceration and re-enter the local community in the ways that they want. And it focuses, what I was reading a lot about, and I'm talking to people who know way more about this than I am, so I'm aware of this. But it focuses a lot on providing healthcare as well as medication continuation, housing support, employment support, and almost all other kinds of social service supports that you can even imagine, and putting together a plan for that individual. And I think that's something that I read that was very key, was that individualized planning that begins back with Intercept 2, with the initial entry into our jail is key. So getting someone's information and starting that process for moving them through and having them leave the jail, from what I'm reading and from some of the recommendations that we've received, can't start too early. Would anyone here, I'm looking at Jordan because I know that you know a lot about this, but would anyone here add to that in terms of just what the context for our discussion might be?
Just to clarify for today, reentry also occurs, I think, during Intercept 2 and 3. Today, you'd like us only to focus, sorry. Reentry also occurs during Intercept 2 and 3 locally. So for today's conversation, you would like to focus specifically on Intercept 4 post-disposition.
That's a good question or comment. I don't know how you can separate it, but I think to the extent that we're looking at putting services or FTEs in place, I think we want to look at what's happening there at Intercept 4. Although I think when we talk about something like case management, that's going to probably need to have things in place in Intercept 2 and 3. And if it's the same person or the same organization, same program, same service, then obviously we'll be hitting on it with other discussions in Intercept 2 and 3 as well. So I don't want to say it's off the table if it's also in 2, but it should be in 4.
Is there a minimum period of jail time that someone's in that we're focusing on, or anyone who's booked into the jail even for 24 hours? just in this conversation, I think there's reentry's need for all of those. I'm just not sure the
It's a
confines.
good question. I don't know.
So I think that's a great question, especially since we know that discharge can happen out of the system, whether it's for especially court or it's for jail time or whether it's into probation. I think all of those things are happening right now in our system. And of course, you know that well better than the rest of us. And so I think that's a question that's worth exploring, particularly as we're talking about where investments are needed. Where can the county council make investments in areas that are maybe underserved or maybe areas that that need more, attention?
Any other thoughts or questions on kind of that context? Okay. So kind of the basis where I started with looking at what are we considering? What are we, basing these conversations on? I went back to the studies that we had done and the reports came out in 2020. And there was a series of recommendations from Eve Hill's study that I thought were particularly relevant to this intersect. First one being include reentry planning, case management, and reentry programming in treatment plans for inmates with mental illness and substance use disorder. And engage community service providers in both in-jail treatment and transition planning. When I read these things, it sort of supports that same thing I was saying before about it starts way before people are actually released. And I'm already thinking that we need to look at being able to strengthen the collaboration between service providers in the community and our jail staff. That's just, you get Kate commentary because I'm sitting right here. Next meeting, it'll be better. The second recommendation that came out of the Hill study is to invest in case management at the jail, to work with jail and community treatment providers, with supervision providers, and with inmates preparing for reentry. So that, to me, is staff that we need to look at and consider a funding mechanism for. Third recommendation is engage and support families and peers in preparing for inmates reentry, including by offering training on coping mechanisms and supporting inmates to prevent relapse and recidivism. That's a whole lot. And I know that we already have programming going on in the jail. It's been ramping up a little bit. And I think that particularly of interest, at least what stood out to me here, is families and peers and supporting that support system that folks in the jail will be needing when they leave. Housing stability is the fourth recommendation. It's instrumental in helping released individuals achieve positive outcomes, including in maintaining employment and avoiding future incarceration. Supported employment services for people with mental illness, SUD, dedicated to returning citizens. And this one is interesting because I know we have some resources for supporting job searches, preparing for employment. And I know that there are programs for employers as well. But the focus here is mental illness and substance use disorder, which may or may not be appropriately linked there. But that what spoke to me about this one was also the need to perhaps emphasize the employment services in that subpopulation. And this one I had to look up. Implement at least one forensic assertive community treatment team. And this is also regarding individuals with severe mental illness, according to what I read. There are some recommendations in the report pointing to how you calculate how many teams you need for your community size based on the prevalence of mental illness in the population. And the recommendation is for one team. And I don't want to get into explaining what it is because I think other people can do that much better than I can. But it is supporting the mental health and intervention as needed for folks who have severe mental illness. Another thing I was looking at is some of the information that New Leaf New Life presented and shared with us at a previous meeting, as well as an amazing list of what they do for folks who are in Monroe County Jail right now. They have their transition support center that offers lots and lots of services, hard to even capture. And is the reentry collective still ongoing? Is it? Not right now. Okay. That was a very cool program, support group, essentially kind of meeting to on a regular basis to provide support for folks who have left incarceration and want to know more. I saw that recommended as a very good practice in reentry. So I would suggest we look at how we can maintain something like that as well. And then New Life also provides both programming and resources for folks who are in the jail. And I can let you talk way more about that. I wanted to also point out the classes in the survey that you did, because the suggested classes that kind of bubbled to the top in a survey of individuals who are in the jail included life skills, employment support, creating the reentry plan, and then Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and Heroin Anonymous. So supporting substance use disorder treatment. I thought creating that reentry plan was really great because all throughout everything else that I'm looking at, those are the recommendations. Start the planning, get people thinking about what their resources and options can be and headed on a path long before they're forced to be out on that path. This is like my last one, I promise. We recently received a document from Sheriff Marte, and he called it his 7 actionable items, and they're essentially 7 new positions that he is interested in putting into Monroe County, either in the jail or the sheriff's office. I'm not doing it justice by just listing titles, but I thought it was worth throwing up there because these are the types of positions that he not only is recognizing a need for, but also has laid out a case for the need. And each of these comes with a price tag. Some of these would be contracted through perhaps the current healthcare provider for the jail. And some of these would be need to be created as county positions and funded through us. So I have not put dollar signs or anything like that on here because I feel like I wanted to get an idea from everyone else at the table, what else you're saying. I mean, I'm already like, oh my gosh, we've got lots and lots of places to invest just in this particular thing. I'm going to stop sharing. And I would like to just hear reactions or suggestions from anyone before I target questions. A lot. Yeah,
So if you look at the agenda online, there is a second page of suggested readings. And one of the readings is a series of scholarly articles by Miriam Northcutt-Brummert, who is a
Mhm.
professor at Indiana University and is working very closely on a program called Reducing Revocations Challenge with our probation department. And that work is very, very important to this area. It will have funding recommendations that we can follow up with. And I encourage everyone to read those. Professor Northcutt-Brummert is going to appear before JFAC at a date to be determined to further go over that Reducing Revocations Challenge information. But I encourage all of you to, if you're interested, read up on that. It's really good information. You can also simply go to scholar.google.com and put in the professor's name and find her information. It's very specific to Monroe County, so it's very germane.
so. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
I was just gonna say that I thought that it was interesting, as we are talking about this particular intercept for, reentry is the fact that, we have a lot of social service programs and organizations. And I feel like everybody just kind of works in their own pocket, but we don't all work together. And I'm looking at people that represent New Leaf, New Life. And then multiple conversations that I've had with Courage to Change and other groups and organizations. I feel like these are things that we could be doing. We can set aside funding, we can work with city as well, and county, and figure out how we can do this together right now. Because what I see in this presentation as the reading that we've done or have done throughout this whole ordeal in this process is the fact that we can do things and we should be doing them, and we should be doing them right now. And there is really no reason, well, there obviously reasons money, but speaking of money, like we have those things that are readily available. You know, we have city, county also have opioid settlement. County still has ARPA dollars that we can still be putting out to the forefront. I know that's a continued conversation that we are having. But I look at a lot of these groups and organizations and think, what could we be doing? And it doesn't seem that we are, it doesn't seem that hard to figure out how to do it. We just need to take that leap of progressive step and just actually do it. So how can we, and I guess that's what I'm interested to hear Jordan's presentation along other conversations to have. What is it that we could be doing right about now?
Yes.
I am not an expert in any of these sequences 4, 0 through 5. But if I could, I just want to make a couple general comments. First, thank you, County Council, for convening this and inviting the city and others to the table. I think that's really constructive and helpful, and I greatly appreciate it. Reading the creation purpose in a document that was shared, at least with me, to help facilitate responsible and informed financial decisions and identify budget priorities that best address our community's justice needs. I just want to, at a very high level, just on behalf of the city and the 85,000 county residents that we represent, and I do, make a couple points. One, just kind of some foundational things. I completely understand and support the need for a new jail facility, which has driven a lot of this. I think that's a reality, that we have a physical space and an operation that, with many people trying really hard to do a lot of good things, is in dire need of improvement. Number two, I take as a reality that we, like all of America, are dramatically over incarcerated, that we as a country and as a community, as a state, are an outlier in the world, and that that's a reality that we need to keep very much front and center, that we are over incarcerated. And third, a reality to me is that we do have an immediate public health crisis going on in our community right now with mental health services needed, with substance use disorder services needed. As Council Member Crossley mentioned, these are immediate needs. And so from my perspective, I would encourage us as a group, and I don't know if and how we get to speak as a group, but I believe that as we move forward as a community with a new improved jail to build and operate as part of the criminal justice system, that we ought to commit that for every dollar that is invested in that, building and operating a new piece of the criminal justice system, that we dedicate another new dollar to help people not be incarcerated, to reduce the need for incarceration, and we do that right away. As was indicated, I don't know, and the county council has the responsibility and role and opportunity to direct how best to invest to reflect budget priorities that meet our needs. As mentioned, there's enormous amount of American Rescue Plan Act money, ARPA money. As you all know very well, the Economic Development Local Income Tax brought 12 million or more new dollars to the county. And I believe as a county resident and as a voter and as a member of this committee, that we ought to not, I don't know the assumption, but that we ought to assume any new dollar that's going into criminal justice, new jail, a good new jail, a great new jail, good operations, that we ought to dedicate at least another dollar to support the services that reduce incarceration. And I'm going to keep beating that drum because I think we have the resource capacity to do it. And I think we ought to do it right away because we're in a public health crisis.
Thanks. That's a good reminder. And I think, I kind of share your desire to see just as much funding put into the prevention and support of our community and keeping folks out of the brand new jail. And that's what we want to figure out today. I mean, all of the things that I outlined are independent of a new facility. And that's kind of the idea behind these conversations. Thanks. Other comments, questions? I would like to invite Jordan McIntyre to talk to us. I know we'd sent some questions. I know you've got a lot going on. I'd like to hear more about what you have with respect to reentry.
Awesome. And Misty, feel free to jump in here as well. Okay, so I think I've talked to most people here at length about New Leaf, New Life, but I'll give another brief summary. So we help folks outside of the jail as well as folks inside of the jail that are currently incarcerated. Outside of the jail, folks can come to our Transition Support Center, which is on South Walnut. It's one of the suites with the Perry Township trustees. And that is where Misty and Stacy offer case management. So New Leaf, New Life, we only have 3 staff members. It's myself, Misty, and Stacy. I think that we provide an incredible amount of support for only being 3 people. So right now, Stacy and Misty help about 10 to 12 people per day this year on average. Last year, they helped 2,700 people in person, 3,400 the year before. Basically in the office doing one-on-one case management, helping with employment, I'll chip in a little with the Eve Hill report stuff that you mentioned. So I know that Goodwill is one employer here that specifically will hire people that are reentering. I think that's really important because if people are like on daily reporting, or if they have like weird requirements for hours that they have to go check in, it's really important that an employer can be flexible with that. And Goodwill has really let us hire people that are in jail that can start as soon as they're out.
It is Goodwill Industries as well. It's not Goodwill, the clothing store. It's Goodwill Commercial Services who we built a really strong relationship that will hire folks pretty much as soon as they get out and give them a chance.
So, and Misty specifically has developed really strong relationships. So some of like our former mentees will now have manager positions at McDonald's, Arby's, places like that. So we have a pretty good relationship with referring people to employment right away. Trying to help people start with a job and then a better job and then a career, but you have to start from somewhere. Helping people sign up for SNAP and HIP and free government cell phones. We noticed that cell phones are a huge thing that folks need pretty immediately, especially for required reporting. We were helping folks sign up for cell phones, and then it takes a couple of weeks for them to arrive. So Misty and Stacy actually became like access wireless providers. So we have them on site and can sign people up and hand them out day of. Helping folks get their birth certificates, because you have to have that to get a social security card and to get other personal ID documents, which are required for E-Verify for people to get employment. And that's something that takes a while to get. So we try to start that process while people are in jail so that once they're released, we have it on hand in our office. We also hand out re-entry kits. So it has basically a backpack, hygiene supplies, bus tickets, and then we have clothing in our office that folks can pick out. A lot of it is donated, but it's kind of like a free little shop so people can come get clothes. We have a relationship with a hair cutter person, and I don't know what they're called.
It's Karen Ketchler's Bent Barbershop has donates us so many haircuts per month. And it's pretty cool, Bent Barbershop.
Yeah. So yeah, vouchers for that, helping folks get prescription and reading glasses if they need that. And we've had people reach out to us that have like incredibly terrible vision. And I can't imagine being incarcerated and also not being able to see on top of that. So little services here and there that maybe on the day-to-day you don't really think of, but are actually incredibly important to people's well-being. And then we try to just do like the seasonal things. So if it's like this past week where it's really raining incredibly hard, we try to have ponchos on hand. In the colder months, we try to have hand warmers. Sometimes the jail will donate their leftover commissary to us. So we'll have like packets of ramen, like the beans and things like that in the office. So if people come to the door and they're really hungry, we try and be able to provide food as well. And then based on grant funding, which we're incredibly lucky and grateful to have some grant funding now, we've been able to help people with housing support. So over the past about year and a half, I think we've helped 75 people with housing. Only 7 of those people have gone back to jail. So the recidivism rates for the people that we've helped with housing is less than 9%. And to put into perspective, helping 75 people with housing has cost us less than $40,000. A majority of that is helping people with transitional housing. And then we just received grant funding from Jack Hopkins to help folks that are in transitional housing, if they're ready for that next step of getting their own place, to help with, a deposit or first month's rent, so that we can help people transition out of transitional housing, and then we can, open up those slots to move people in. And then for the folks that are mentees that come into the office, our general recidivism rates are 23.7%. So that's the folks that we help with, just case management, employment, things like that. And then for folks that are inside the jail, we provided that survey to see what the most wanted classes how that would kind of shake out. So for the past few months on Friday mornings, we've been providing that reentry planning class. We have, I think we're at 7 community volunteers that provide that every Friday morning. And since they're community volunteers, that the only thing we pay for that program is really printing costs, and we provide like little notebooks that don't have any metal in them. So we maybe spend like $300 to $400 a year just on printing out resources. And, you know, we've gotten good feedback from that. So we provide a resource guide that we have compiled along with volunteers and people with lived experience. And then kind of like a reentry workbook so people can plan out, you know, what their next steps are. And then folks can also write to us through in-house mail. This year, we're averaging about 160 letters per month. So Stacy, Misty, myself, and we currently have an intern that are responding to all of those. Am I missing anything big right now?
I think one thing that is extremely unique about our office is, first off, Stacy and I are both certified recovery coaches. Second off, people who, like I in particular, who work in the office have lived experience. So like, they're not coming to somebody who has no clue about, you know, and it's sometimes off-putting when you go and meet with somebody who has literally no idea what you're talking about. You know, it seems like people, do better with somebody that knows what they're saying. You know, it's such a difficult thing to reenter because, you know, just at our office the other day, I was working with Jordan. I'm like, I'm going to try to schedule a mental health evaluation, which is a requirement for probation, mental health or substance abuse, usually appointment. I did this and it was, I had to call them with, you know, I'm just released from jail. So I have to call them and schedule an appointment with a phone I don't have. Then I have to show up to their office with an appointment I can't make or get to, with a document that I don't have, to fill out an hour's worth of paperwork that I don't know the answers to. And then just to be scheduled 3 times out before I meet with somebody who can improve my situation, just to tell me I have problems I already know I have. You know what I mean? So it's really like super sad, but yeah, we do a lot. Sometimes we just do sober support. We have a good turnout of returning mentees, folks who just come back and say, hey, I'm doing great. You know, or maybe, you know, I don't need anything right now. I just wanted to check in with you guys because you've been a so support to me. So yeah, I find it, it's a good dynamic to work with somebody who knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, and to follow up with that, I think it's important to consider when discussing stuff like this, that there is a huge difference in people feeling safe enough to be honest and vulnerable with you. I know, like, when Sheriff Marte was first talking about having kind of like a jail campus and having, you know, the community supports right there. I know for us personally, that's not something that we would be interested in, because I think that people would stop coming to us. We have people that come to our office that are like, I messed up. What do I do? Like, I'm still on probation. What should I do? And, you know, they have that experience and they can calm them down and talk them through the process of, you know, you have to be honest. You have to call your probation officer. You have to, but, you know, no one's going to go to a jail campus and ask us for that sort of advice when, you know, the jail is right next door. So yeah, it's just different. I think like having a reentry person that works at the jail, there are things that they could help with potentially, like, you know, maybe setting up employment and things like that ahead of time. But as far as that emotional and social follow-up support, that has to be community led and community driven. And honestly, I think it would be more affordable that way. So like I said, I think that we do really great work. Stacy and Misty do incredible work, and I wish that I could pay them more. But the 3 of us, for helping thousands of people each year, on average, our yearly budget is like $150,000. It's not that much. And it's hard for us to get that through scraping together multiple grants. It's my full-time job is just keeping everyone paid and making sure we can buy backpacks and print things off. But, you know, looking at the probation annual budget and prosecution budget, I'm like, millions of dollars, like $100,000 would be life-changing to our organization and the amount of people that we can help. So honestly, I really think that investing in community organizations that are already doing the work is going to be more cost-effective than trying to recreate a wheel that's already greased. We just need a little support.
Thank you for all of that information. When you say that $100,000 would be life-changing for your organization, that makes me want to get out a checkbook, but I don't have that personally. And we have a lot of rules around what we can spend and how we can do it. And I'm wondering if, I think I asked you this once before a while back, but in terms of like either a capital investment or one-time thing that then you would spend quickly, immediately, and not years into the future, would that be as beneficial to you, or would that be useful to you? And how would you suggest that be done? And I just put her on the spot.
No, you're fine. I don't know. I think that's a little difficult because I think that our biggest and best resource are staff that have the lived experience, that meet with people every day, that know all of the resources and they know who to call. And that's not an immediate one-time expense. That's a prolonged expense. You know, we're lucky and we're grateful that the Perry Township trustees allow us to have that space. So we're not, you know, really hurting for like a building or a vehicle. It's just the hardest thing to fund is staff. People want to fund things that you can take pictures of and show them and they feel really great about it. But yeah, it's hard to pay for staff. And from my perspective, that's our greatest resource, that human connection with someone that's been through what you're going through, and they can help provide that case management and that social and emotional support. So as far as a one-time investment, I mean, I think that there are things that our community needs that currently New Leaf New Life wouldn't, you know, be in a position to do, but you know, we're always needing more places for people to live, whether it's affordable apartments or housing or just more transitional housing units. But, you know, those are all prolonged expenses because then you have to pay for staff to house them from, you know, do case management there. So.
So one of the things that came up in your presentation and some of your answers was substance use disorder. There's been a lot of conversation in our community about substance use disorder deaths and the toll that's taking on our community, and very, very intentionally have people sitting around this table who have a lot of experience in that area. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the intersectionality between what you're seeing in reentry and what you're seeing with SUD?
So I mean, folks with substance use disorder get arrested far more often than not, right? What is the question exactly?
So I think my question is multiple fold. So first of all, what is the connection between what you're seeing and people coming out of Monroe County Jail and substance use disorder? Are you seeing that there are enough resources for individuals to either have safety when they're around individuals who are using or themselves are using? So I think of harm reduction. Are there enough resources for those folks to be abstinent if they choose to be enrolled in abstinence programs? Do we have enough resources in the community to be doing these things based upon what you're seeing?
I mean, I don't think so. No, because like whenever I tried to make the mental health substance use evaluation, was a 6-step process, right, for me to do that. You know, there are great organizations in Bloomington that are small organizations doing great things, in my opinion, like Amethyst House, like Courage to Change Sober Living, like IRA, the harm reduction in IRA that's done, the Outreach at Positive Link. So they're like these little small orgs, but who are basically like in the same boat we are, where they have 3 or 4 staff, or they have, it's a small grassroots organization that can't handle the load of folks who are being released with substance abuse disorder. You know, and for me, I mean, I'll just share a little bit about because I'm here as a representative for somebody who's been in our county jail. I'm a heroin addict, and I'm super humble and grateful to be here with you guys. And that every time anybody wants my opinion on anything, I'm like, wow, it's super weird. Like the mayor's here. It's pretty weird. I was just going over with Jordan before we came in here. I've been arrested. I have 20 things that show up on my case, 20.
Wow.
Right. I know. I'm sad about it, but like, and then they never go away. I'm like, maybe if I look next time, they never go away. And it reads so predictably. It's like the most boring book ever, right? I pick up my first charge as a DUI, 2003. So I get a DUI in 2003, and guess what my next 3 charges are? Driving with no license, right? Because I have 2 kids, and I have this DUI, and I can't afford to get my license back, right? So it's financial. And, you know, I had an alcohol problem in the beginning, like a lot of folks with substance misuse disorder start with alcohol, you know, start small and then work up. And then I just continued with addiction until I started to catch my beginning felonies. First felony I ever caught was a theft, right? Shoplifting. Right. And then that just first, you know, I was arrested, put on probation, released. I can't maintain my probation. And I have 20 things that show up on my case. And I haven't even looked into how many times I was arrested on those 20 things because I couldn't complete probation. Right. I know the jail guards pretty well, you know, that. So all these, it's just so predictable. Like I was showing you in my case, that this drunk driving, no license, blah, 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 to theft. And it was 2003 when I was arrested for the first time. It was 2017 before I was offered treatment for addiction. So before anybody, before a public defender, before a prosecutor, before a judge said, man, like, did she just like shoplifting or what? Like nobody said, like they were sentencing me on shoplifting charges. I never felt safe enough to say, hey, look, man, I got a drug problem, right? Because then that's bringing a whole mess and other trouble I don't want. But guess what my last charge was? My last charge was possession of methamphetamine, possession of heroin, and possession of a syringe. Right. I was charged, arrested, possession of a syringe for a needle card that I had. So then I had to fight that battle, you know, to get that done. But you know, that's a whole nother thing. But you know, what changed for me? What was the real change? You know, I'm 45 years old and I've been doing this since 2003. And what the real change for me was that when I was released from jail, I was not released on probation. My judge at the time of my last arrest retired while I was up there waiting. I'm like, man, this lady is sick of seeing me. And I get a new judge. And this is a whole fresh set of eyes. And they were like, all right, well, bingo. Obviously, now you've got the charge that shows us what your problem is. And they gave me some agency. And I remember the judge at that day, I remember her asking me, like, from her desk and saying, you know, what do you want to do? And I was like, really? I just want to leave here, you know, I'll be good, you know, and I don't know what possessed me that day to say, man, I'm tired. And I don't want to, I'm tired. And then they just started to work together as a team. All right. My prosecutor, who was, yeah, I've known him for my whole criminal career, right? It's like, I'm tired of it. I'm tired too. You know, he was like, I'm tired too. Me too. And my public defender's like, I'm tired. You know, I've been having her for years. And they all worked together and they came up with a plan that I was a part of, that I said, they said, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to treatment? Where do you want to go? Because I was offered treatment in 2017. They sent me to South Bend. I was in there for 28 days and sent me right back here homeless. That went well for me. So they worked on a plan and they got me into Amethyst House. And that changed my life. I never used a drug again after that. I never did. And then while I was there, I got a little job working at Wendy's. I still work at Wendy's in the morning before I go to New Leaf New Life because I have gratitude for that company that gave me a second chance. Try to explain a break in employment of 15 years to somebody who's interviewing you. Like, I won't steal your money on your cash register. I'm better now. It was very difficult for me to obtain employment, but like New Leaf from day one supported me. Like, they got me non-slip shoes, right? Even something as simple as that. That's another thing that we provide quite often. Folks have to have non-slip shoes, right? They have to have bus tickets to get to work. They have to have birth certificates they can't afford, right? They don't have money for birth certificates. They have to have these. So they got me my first pair of non-slips, and I stayed at Amethyst, and I'm like, man, this is the life for me. I started to get a little money at like $200 or something and saved, and I started to get excited, and I was like, man, what can I do? And New Leaf New Life helped find me placement with Courage to Change, right? And I went to Courage to Change, and I stayed there almost 2 years. I lived there. I grew this. I got a driver's license, full coverage insurance. So Jordan on the way here, I have full coverage insurance. Like, I wear my seatbelt. I am not, but I am the same Missy that was arrested in 2003, right? I have a lot of support now. And I think really the answer is support and supporting the grassroots organizations that are helping these folks, right? New Leaf New Life, who is also a second chance employer, right? They hire felons. Like, actually, if you have a felony at New Leaf New Life, they love it. They love to employ the folks who have felony charges. I've never worked at a job where they were like, you know what, your background is exactly what we're this works for me. You know what I mean? And it just creates empowerment for me. Right. And so after Courage to Change, now I'm also the board president for Courage to Change Sober Living. So I have like changed my life so dramatically. I don't even recognize who I was. And it wasn't one thing. It wasn't two things. It was numerous organizations that pulled for me that helped me get stable. And it was self too, right? I was tired. And it was timing. And I think just acknowledging that as probation officers, public defenders, judges, prosecutors, and saying, this person, I have 0 violent charges. I'm a shoplifter and I like to have drugs in my pocket sometimes and drive with no license. Like, these are the things that I have a 20-year criminal history. I could not get out of the system over. Not like I didn't break into people's houses and hurt folks. I was just happy to hurt myself. And so like, maybe if somebody would have noticed between 2003 and 2017, maybe this lady deserves some agency in what's going on with her. And why is she shoplifting? Is she an addict? You know what I mean? It's very difficult. And, I get the probation papers and they're like, have you ever used drugs? I'm like, absolutely not. Nope. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to be honest because probation settings are tough places to be honest, right? And I don't know. But that's kind of how my story evolved and how I ended up okay. It was a group. It was a group, and it started in the jail. Why I was in jail. Another thing is New Leaf New Life would show up to my court dates and advocate for me and say, hey, like these are things we can do for her when she gets out, or help her do for herself. Just stuff like that. So starting while folks are incarcerated and starting before folks are incarcerated, right? Why do we call the police on everybody? I don't know. In my opinion, why do people call the police on everybody? Like, it's quick to think you're hard. You could cause like iatrogenic harm by thinking you're helping someone you're not helping.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I go on and on about reentry, but I appreciate you guys letting me come here and valuing my opinion.
Well, thank you, because that gives me a lot to think about. I'm sure it gives everyone something to think about.
But I think that example is what shows that this topic is very difficult. It's a whole bunch of things entangled in one. It's not easy to just say, here's $1 million, make this go away. It's about so many different avenues of support, housing, employment, all of those things. But you know, there are also like laws and things in place that make it hard for, if someone is incredibly stressed out, you're going to be more likely to use again, right? And if you are in trouble and you can't pay child support, you lose your license. And if you're, you know, there are just so many little things that happen that make people's lives more difficult that lead to relapse. It's not just like there is a lack of treatment from my perspective, especially like Misty was saying, the local places where we can call them, we have a direct number and say, do you have an open bed? It's not like you call this 1-800 number and then you get rerouted to 40 people and we don't even know where we're sending our people. So yeah, local treatment places, I wish that they had more funding so that they could expand if that's what they would want to do, like to do. Like Misty also said, we were just wondering the other day, hey, if you needed to like set up an appointment for therapy right now, like how long would that take? And I don't remember where you called, but she actually called somewhere and we did the math and it was going to be over 5 weeks before she could get an appointment. And especially if people are on like Suboxone or MAD, or, you know, any medically assisted treatment, which has been proven to help people, it's really difficult to consistently get your hands on. So, you know, I think access to medically assisted treatment would help people. Yeah, anything that would make people's lives easier, more tolerable would be likely to decrease folks using again.
As far as employment goes, we like do a direct referral with Goodwill Industries. To where it's just literally a piece of paper. I send it over and they, you know, we have such a relationship with them that I would say they would hire 95% or greater of the referrals that I send over with zero barrier on background. So, yeah, just being able to, because there's only 3 staff members too, you know, it's hard for me. I do a lot. I do know a lot of people and have built a lot of relationships in the community. I do not get, what is interesting to me is I do not get a lot of calls from probation or in places like that trying to like, I do get some because there are some probation officers that do reach out and work with me. Like, hey, I got a person who needs some extra help. But, and, you know, I go out of my way to help folks where their probation officer calls and stuff like that. But I'm surprised in the lack of probation officers that call us for help or parole officers that call us for help. Yeah, I don't see a lot of that, but I'd love to be more out into the community to where we could build more relationships. And it's face-to-face things that are so, I mean, I can build as many as I want to over the phone, but it's face-to-face that's super important. Like, you know, hi, I'm Misty, I'm with New Leaf New Life, and let me tell you what I got for you. You know.
And I think that the health department's been doing a pretty cool like mapping project. Did you want to?
Sure. Yeah. So with one of our community health improvement plans that I know that I've talked to a couple of you in the room about, we're trying to do a mapping project to identify, sorry, really bad at this hard speaking. Trying to do a mapping project to identify some of those gaps so we can figure out what some of those low hanging fruit, you know, might be to address. We should be putting that together starting next week. And I was also thinking about like all this reentry stuff. With the IRACS program, the Integrated Reentry Assisted Community Service, I think is what it's called. And I had a conversation with a woman named Callie Hans, who does Thrive, which is a certified recovery community organization down in Scott County. And so she, in addition to doing that as her RCO, she's also a part of the IRACS program. And what they do is they have peers that are in the jail. And they also work with them for 30, 90 days as soon as they leave the jail. I also learned that they have reimbursement money. So that's something that can help fund that. And I also, I'm jumping around a lot, got a notice in my email last week from the NACO or the National Association of Counties about something to do with Medicaid in the jail. So to help with that. So I think I sent that at least to Peter for some other project, but that might also be something that would be helpful. And I don't know if the IRACS program would be something that y'all could like hop on. I know that it's pretty specific to substance use, but it might be more broad than that.
That is a lot of information. Thank you. And I'm aware of the mapping project. I'm glad that it's kind of hopefully coming out soon. To that same and in terms of providing resources, the surveyor and Cheryl Munson on county council have been communicating about a physical map or electronic map that literally lays out where the resources are and puts, indicates their proximity to each other, but also to the jail sites that are being considered as in the current jail. And I think that's going to be really helpful as we move forward and consider these things as well. And hopefully it'll be useful for service providers to also kind of share with folks who need to find services literally on this, on the map. You had something, yes.
And I'm sorry, I can't stay too much longer, but first, thank you for sharing. And it is a privilege to be at the table with people working so hard to make the community better. Thank you for that. I have a question, I think, for you three voters on this committee. I know, like the city, you are probably in the formation of budget times for 2024. Is this group, can we be helpful? Can we be relevant to recommending things about the 2024 budget? And if so, how do we do that for the county?
One of the things that we wanted to do with this body was get our recommendations from this group to the county council by September, which means it would be just in time for our budget deliberations. So you see the information that Sheriff Marte has shared about his 7 new positions. That's going to be part of budget deliberations. Questions about, what are we going to be funding more health department mapping? Are we going to be funding more FTEs at New Life? Are we going to be funding all these questions are going to be just in time for our budget season. And then we also put a clause that ends this body in December if it served its purpose and we no longer need it. But if this is helpful and we need to keep it going for the next budget cycles, both city and county, then the county council can make that determination.
I don't know if this is a way that we can ask questions back and forth to some of the people, but and hearing that question is, I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Mayor, about things, but is this, since we are having a collaborative conversation of sort, is this something that could possibly be a potential thing that the city can put in their budget and try to help fund with these things as well?
Yes, I mean, the city is developing our budget a little earlier cycle than that. We will be presenting it. We get it pretty much locked in by August. But we certainly continue, I expect, we will be continuing to ask our council to invest seriously in housing. I don't think it's out of the question that we could do some things on public health, though that's not our typical bailiwick. I look, you all know I've talked to you about this. I think there are serious, money doesn't solve all problems. I appreciate when you say you can't just throw $1 million at something, but in my view, these kind of serious issues need serious money too. And I think we have it at the county level. I think we have, we've dedicated new city revenue to serious work on housing, serious work on improving transportation for people, serious work on an economic equity fund that we're spending $1 million a year on to try to help those in need. And I think integrating it is good. I think having this group, us who are on this to advise on fiscal investments, I just want us to be loud and proud about what this community wants and stands for. And I think we have the capacity to do a lot with, and I look forward to the city working with you on that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We had a hand up, no hand up anymore?
Board of Commissioners had their hand up for a second. It doesn't,
Nope, now it is.
it's still there.
Okay.
Hi, this is actually Penny Githens. I didn't change my name from today when I had my virtual office hour. I want to commend the folks from New Leaf New Life for being there today and just opening their souls about what things are like for them on a regular basis. I would like to go strong on looking at the IRACS program, and it builds on some of the same concepts that the folks from New Leaf New Life are talking about in terms of building trust with people and getting a lot of other things in place immediately, absolutely immediately when people have contact with our justice system. So I look forward to having that kind of support for what we want to do here in the county. And we'll try to keep you all appraised of what we have going forward, if that's okay. But thanks for having this discussion.
Thanks. I wanted to hear from some other folks around the table and specifically where you see what you're doing and where you see we could work, put things in place to augment all of your strengths. I keep looking at you like, come on, didn't you come with like a big no? Yep. Commissioner Thomas, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. I also wish to thank the folks at New Leaf New Life and all the hard work they've done and all the information they provided. I would offer a bit of caution at the mention of adding Monroe County FTEs and utilizing those to staff New Leaf New Life. I think grant money is much more appropriate because the organization is respected for their independence. And I think that that's something to consider is a annual sum of money rather than employing and then having some sort of input onto the direction of the work that they do. So that's just my suggestion, and I just want to thank everyone.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious about, with respect to that comment, the balance between knowing that if we're going to increase collaboration on activities that start within the jail facility, and I want to respect that what you said about these being community-based and the trust that's lost just by location. How do we bridge that gap? Because what I was initially headed toward was, well, if we have a coordinator within county government, within the facility that can work across, be that liaison, then they can, that's putting another FTE into our budget, I guess. And so I guess that's what I was thinking. And I think Commissioner Thomas makes a good point about, it might be better thought of as a grant. I'm wondering how anyone here sees that working, and if you have ideas about how that might best work.
I think the question was directed more at you than me.
Yeah.
But I have thoughts.
No, I completely agree with that. The hard thing about grant funding is that, I think on average, I'm probably applying to at least 15 or 20 grants every year. And it's hard because some of the bigger grants that we try to apply for that are more like state or federal level with supporting reentry efforts, they typically want to fund like jails or like correctional centers. And obviously we aren't a jail. So it's hard for us to get those like larger level ones. So we rely a lot on local grants. But then, of course, those aren't guaranteed every year. And not getting one is really impactful. So right now, we're really, the three of us are really at max capacity. And if we had the ability to hire one more person a year, which would be ideally like $40,000, we would significantly be able to expand what we do. And that's, in comparison to everything else, not a lot of money. The hard thing is taking that step to actually hire a new person, because I would never want to have an employee hire an employee without knowing that we would have, their salary guaranteed for at least a year out. And that's very difficult to do with grant funding, because those typically last about a year. And at any one time, I have 4 to 6 grants covering 3 staff members. So it's very difficult. It's incredibly difficult, especially when it's not, guaranteed that you're going to get it every year. So, but yeah, I do agree that part of what makes us unique and effective is that we don't have any association with, the jail or government or anything like that. So we're just community members, and I think people trust us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just to provide an example, we were asked with trying to help find folks with lived experience just to come sit on this committee. A lot of the people we work with are either actively on probation or in one of the reentry courts, and they don't want to come and speak about it in front of people. So it's there's a lot of fear and a lot of pressure with anything involving the system. So we try to stay away from that as much as possible.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and all the more appreciate your role here. Ms. Calendar Anderson.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know that there are things that can be funded. Looking at staffing, I mean, as we're talking about ARPA funds, we know that we can't fund staff with that money. But there are also things that we can influence, and I wonder if we can look at, I mean, when you talked about it taking 5 weeks to get to a therapist or something like that, is there a way that we can work with, or city, county, whoever can work with some of our local agencies to see what we can do to affect those systems, so that it is not taking 5 weeks, that people can get the services they need quicker than that period of time? I can't even imagine what that would be like, to be waiting 5 weeks for therapy. So maybe we need to look at the existing systems and see how they might be influenced to speed up that process.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just going to say how much I appreciate that comment, because I know in some of the recommended reading you had was specifically about trying to facilitate warm handoffs. And I can tell you that from experience, sometimes we're all in the room trying to make sure someone has enough medication from when they're released to the jail to when they make their first appointment. And even with everyone doing as best as we can to facilitate that, it can be very, very difficult. 5 weeks actually was shorter. It's still very long, shorter than some of the times that we've had where we are trying to get people into treatment or to get an appointment. It can be even longer than that, months, which is difficult when someone is in that crisis mode. So any help in being able to make that process more expedient or easier for someone to make connections would be pretty helpful, I would say.
To that point, in the list of reading for today, I was really desirous to put information about reentry court, because I really do think that's very unique about Monroe County. I know we're not the only county that has it, but it's a good program. We have it here, and the courts are doing a good job with it. Could you talk more about how that works, how reentry court works, and how it works with not only the court system, but how it liaises with community organizations in your experience?
I think that's a great question that I'd have to bring someone with a lot more experience in with that area to be able to answer fully. Because we do have actually multiple treatment courts, right? We have mental health court, we have reentry court, we have veterans treatment court. we have drug court, so so I think we could give a presentation on that to kind of give that a probably even joint from different perspectives, because as you know, it's a team. But I'd want to make sure someone gives you accurate, complete information on it, because I don't serve on those courts.
So one of the things that we've heard, I think that would be great. And the reason why I think that's great is because we've heard over and over again that our community is siloed. That we've got community organizations working here and we've got courts working over here and we've got government working over here. And sometimes it's hard to find connections. The mapping project is a great example of how that's working to find connections. So I think anything we can do to figure out ways to reduce those silos is going to be helpful. And particularly if, well, I'll leave it there.
So to go back to New Leaf, New Life, and thank you, Misty, for sharing your story and having the courage to come and speak to us about your experience. I know it wasn't easy, but thank you so much for doing that. My question is, because y'all have mentioned that you talk with IRA, Amethyst, all those groups. And what I notice is that those are smaller groups that are doing a lot of work, maybe more so than some of the bigger groups that are doing it. My question is, with those groups in mind, such as like Centerstone and Strive, do you all work in tandem with them? Have they reached out to you? Do you reach out to them? What does that look like with your, I guess, long story short, or long story short in my question, do those types of groups work with y'all?
I, on a daily basis, I would say there are some, like the CRT program for Centerstone, and they do bring some clients over to us for to help fill documents and things like that. I think it's more the clients like saying, hey, I want to go to New Leaf, New Life, than it is like Centerstone as a whole. I think the clients is just like word of mouth, like, hey, can I go to New Leaf, New Life? I need a job. I need some shoes. I need some, and so I think it's more like just the clients that ask to come to us. I have had a few caseworkers for Centerstone reach out to us on like documentation, just, or sometimes like a strike center might not have shoes or something like that. So then they would call us for that. But a collaboration with Centerstone, no, we do not, or we have not.
Yeah, I think it's been a little difficult just because it just seems like they're so big that it's hard to know who to contact for what. So if someone's not sure who to contact for New Leaf, they just call our office and all of us are sitting right there. But with Centerstone, like today, for example, I was picking up the mail from the jail and I had a release of information Centerstone form, and I'm like, does this go to the prosecutors? Does this go to their public defender? Does this go to Centerstone? And I couldn't just call Centerstone and say, hey, I received this mail, what's this about? Because it's just, I think once it gets to a certain size, it becomes a little impersonal, and then it's, I don't know who's behind the curtain and who I'm supposed to call for information about what. But I will say that going in some of the grant meetings, like for the downtown outreach grant, there are like a couple of folks in there that are, work for Centerstone. So there are certain avenues that I can find ways to connect with people, but they just have like a lot of branches of things going on. So, versus like Amethyst, we know people by name and can get a hold of them pretty easily.
Right. We have a very, I would say the most stable, like residential treatment relationship that we have. And also, so because Amethyst also has outside, it's outpatient care as well. So evaluations, but those are, like I said, small grassroots places that can take on so many, like absolutely, in my opinion, doing the best work. Courage to Change Sober Living is, so we have the ability to house 10 females and 16 men. right? Our houses remain full constantly. Like, so, and then, it's easy for me on a daily basis. I do have folks who are ready to go to treatment, or I can get them in 28-day places like Wooded Glen, other relationship places that I built, relationships with our local community members want to come back to their community. And the problem is like, where are they going to go? Right? A lot of treatment options. We have ICFR, which is like private pay, private insurance. Same with Boca, private pay, private insurance. Like, so it seems like there's a lot of options, but there's a lot of barriers to those places too. If you don't have private pay, private insurance, we're talking $15,000 or more a month to stay at a private pay, private insurance facility.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
And I believe we're gonna have someone from Centerstone at maybe our next meeting, or
To be determined at this point, but we did want to have some information from Centerstone, particularly about Intercept Zero, about the crisis center and the mobile crisis teams. However, the individual that will be coming from Centerstone is pretty knowledgeable about all services and could answer some additional questions, I'm sure.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, I have lots of questions about collaborating and maybe how across the system we can maybe help with connections and making things a little bit easier. Are there other comments from those sitting right here? Yes.
Just related to Centerstone, when we did our survey for the health department for the CJRC, one of the things that we learned was that, there were a lot of service providers that I mean, they were on my email list or, had connected with at some point, and they didn't know how to refer people to Stride. It was, since the criteria had changed over time, it was previously just through law enforcement. And since, like I could call somebody right now and say, hey, do you want to go to Stride? But that wasn't really well known. And so I don't know where the barrier is, but I thought that was notable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important difference. I'd like to make sure that we have time for any public comment. So if there are members of the public who would like to do so, you can do so online by raising your hand, or if you'd like to come up to the table, if you're in the room, we are happy to hear from you on any of these myriad topics.
Hello. Okay.
Hi, welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Hardesty, and I'm giving public comment today as a member of the Monroe County Women's Commission. Along with many other community members, the members of the Women's Commission have been following the work of the Sheriff's Office, the Community Justice Response Committee, the Community Justice Meetings hosted by Care Not Cages and the Monroe County NAACP, this new Justice Fiscal Advisory Committee, and the planning decisions that have been made so far for the new jail by the county commissioners and the county council. We've not heard much mention in these meetings or in these decisions about requirements regarding women or women identifying inmates, multi-gender, non-binary or transgender inmates, or disabled inmates in terms of housing and supporting their needs while incarcerated, providing services to prevent incarceration, or providing help after incarceration. To try and learn more, we formed a subgroup and reviewed the documents provided on the Community Justice Response Committee's website. We found that the Monroe County, Indiana 2020 Criminal Justice and Incarceration Study and the Health Department Survey Responses and Questions documents seem to be the only documents containing information about what has been the situation for these populations of inmates in our county jail. We gathered what we found from those documents and have shared that report with the Justice Fiscal Advisory Committee, Sheriff Marte, Commander Gibbons, and the Monroe County Commissioners. We recognize that a main source of our information, the 2020 study, is old data. The 2020 study of our county jails only evaluating data from 2003 to 2018. And while the health department survey was from earlier this year, the findings we gathered were from qualitative responses only and didn't speak to medical needs of multigender, non-binary, transgender, or disabled inmates, for example. The Monroe County Women's Commission Gender Equity and Justice Response Subgroup would like to help, if possible, to gather updated information and speak in support of the needs of women and women identifying inmates, as well as multigender, non-binary, transgender, and disabled inmates in our county jail. Our intent is to be of service and point out that women and the LGBTQIA+ and disabled communities need care and representation. The Women's Commission is ready to do work in this area.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And appreciate that you sent that via email as well. We will be in touch. Are there any other public comments? Either here? Nope, come on up.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. It's nice to see some familiar faces and also to meet some new folks. My name is Seth Muchler. I am a resident of the county. I do community organizing, including with Care Not Cages, and I do serve on the board of directors for New Leaf, New Life. So thanks y'all for being here. I appreciate you forming this committee and having these conversations in what I feel is a very productive, collaborative, and outcomes-oriented manner. I wrote these notes earlier today, and I think a lot of the things that I'm going to say were sort of already discussed in a lot of ways, asked and answered. But I wanted to sort of add some of the things that have been on my mind and hopefully share to help further the conversation. So I have sort of three things that I was thinking about. I just want to say something that I think when is said seems really obvious, but is important to keep in mind. The most successful re-entry from incarceration is to never enter in the first place. We see all the ways in which life is significantly disrupted from incarceration for the person who is incarcerated, for their families and loved ones, and for the community as a whole. And so I know that today the topic was for Intercept 4, but I think it's important to remember that this is a gated system. If a person doesn't enter the carceral system in the first place, they will not have the many inevitable harms done upon them and will not require any re-entry services. I also want to note that, so incarceration and involvement in the carceral system reaches far beyond the walls of a jail cell. As we consider Intercept 4 re-entry, Intercept 5 community corrections, please remember that programs administered by the criminal legal system and by the state are inherently coercive and thus are not true re-entry to a free society. Probation, electronic monitoring, the problem-solving courts, a topic that I think deserves their own conversation, and other mandated acts, including state-mandated treatment, are still restrictions of a person's autonomy and are thus not replacements for incarceration, but instead substitutions. Actual re-entry from incarceration is a complete dissolution of the binds held on a person by the carceral system and should be the goal and the expectation. And so to that end, and I think this is something that I think was talked about a lot today, I want to strongly encourage you all to seek out and prioritize true community-based, non-coercive re-entry programs, many of which already exist in our community and merely need additional funding to provide additional services. I see the norm being in a lot of ways to put re-entry towards organizations and employees within the carceral system to organizations that work in close tandem with the city and county, thus acting as de facto arms of the state themselves. With these, even with very well-intentioned professionals, I think that by being representatives of the state, they inherently provide pressure of coercion. Simply put, like just a do as I say or risk being punished, even if the professional is not saying that. By being a representative of the state, that pressure is there. So I ask you to instead look to solutions that many of which have been outlined today for organizations such as Courage to Change, New Leaf, New Life, and Beacon, to name a few that each, to the best of my knowledge, provide these re-entry, housing, and other assistance programs without threat of incarceration or other punitive measures. So thank you all very much for your time and for your very hard work. It's good to see meetings like this happening again. I look forward to continuing to discuss these challenging topics with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Are there any other public comments? Just want to say that Seth's comment echoed an anonymous comment in the Q&A, basically asking, can we not refer people to New Leaf, can we not refer people to New Leaf, New Life, and not send them to jail? Jail causes harm. So essentially, providing these types of supports prior, which I hope that we'll get into when we talk about Intercept Zero. I'm looking to see if there's anything else. Nothing else online. Please come on up.
Hi, my name is Sam Holdeman. Thanks for presenting this opportunity to provide public comment and for keeping this very important conversation going. I want to focus on a couple ways, or maybe two ways, that Monroe County can improve the state of Intercept 4 or reentry. The first of these, to put it bluntly, is to get off people's backs. I think try holding a job while doing day reporting, while completing drug and alcohol testing, while paying for and completing whatever treatment you've been sentenced to, all the requirements of probation, community supervision, things like that. People do it, which is a super testament to their strength and determination, but that is not helpful. So yeah, people coming out of jail have big enough problems already finding housing, finding employment. They don't need to organize, or they shouldn't have to organize their whole lives around community supervision. And community supervision doesn't really work. According to the 2022 Monroe County Circuit Court annual report, only 51% of 237 individuals successfully completed day reporting. So only about half, and only 54% of 971 people successfully completed the terms of their probation. So it's not like these programs, which are currently very well funded, have a super high success rate. And so in my opinion, we need less monitoring, we need fewer requirements, fewer user fees, because the more people are surveyed and the more hoops they have to jump through, the more likely they are to fall or get tripped up. So the first thing would be just don't stand in people's way. I think we as a county need to invest less in community corrections. What we could do with that money instead of funding community corrections like probation, would be a lot of things that have been identified, and I know we all agree are important. When the Eve Hill report, has outlined things like permanent supportive housing. I don't think like there's anyone here who really doubts that that is vital. But when it comes to how to fund that, I understand that there are limitations on what the county council can fund and how they can fund it, and that does get very complicated. But some of this funding could come from other things that are not helpful, like community corrections. And also, I kind of feel like, we elected y'all as county councilors to figure out how to fund what your priorities are, right? So I would just say, please prioritize the community-based, just basic quality of life things over community corrections, community supervision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment about that also?
Of course.
Just because I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back here and speak again. We've worked with a lot of people that obviously are on probation or in the reentry courts. And from my perspective, it's incredibly problematic, just to be frank. We have people that have been in the problem-solving courts for years and they've completed all their requirements except for paying the fees. So they're literally still stuck on doing their reporting and getting these drug screens, and the bill is just racking up and they can't pay it off, so they continue to be on it. I know for the first 45 days of being in problem-solving court, something like that, maybe longer, they have to do daily reporting at community corrections 7 days a week, even if it's a holiday. They can go through your phone and look at your texts and your stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know how people are able to successfully complete that and pay all of the fees for it. So I think it's like somebody said, like there could be a whole presentation just on that to better understand it. But we've worked with a lot of people that are like stuck in there because they can't finish paying it off.
I just want to be really clear. I don't know how you meant this, but you are always welcome at this table.
Right, I was going to say that. Yeah, thanks for that. I think one of the recommendations in the other report that we received talked about reducing or eliminating fees. Specifically, I think around probation, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of conversation over the years about eliminating or reducing user fees for that very reason. It is how onerous they are, and there's a lot of, we could have. The hard thing about this is that there's so much to talk about. There's so much to dive into. And I think one of the public commenters' points is we were elected to prioritize. That's what we're trying to do.
Are there any other more comments from members of the public? And all right, it looks like then we'll close public comment. And I do have an item for, I suppose, the voting members, which is the approval of the summary minutes from June 5th, 2023.
I move to approve the summary minutes of June 5th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, is there any amendment, change, edit, suggestion? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from our last meeting on June 5th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. What motion passes, and we need to sign this. There you go. I just want to make sure that you all know how much I appreciate you being here, and feel free to reach out if you think of other things that you think we could be incorporating into our decision making. This isn't just like a one-time thing. I'm hoping that maybe you and I could sit down at some point and talk a little bit more about the system and stuff. That would be great. That would be great. Other than that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
See you all on the 10th.
If you want it. Don't say it.